Welcome to Harry's History, a diplomatic history YouTube channel focusing on the evolving world of geopolitics, trying to understand why wars start and end. This video is a basic introduction. Diplomacy, the art of conducting negotiations between states, has undergone significant changes throughout history. From ancient civilizations to the modern era, diplomacy has evolved to adapt to changing circumstances, shifting power dynamics, and new technologies. One of the earliest forms of diplomacy was the sending of emissaries or envoys to negotiate treaties and establish diplomatic relations between states. In ancient Greece, ambassadors were sent to other city-states to negotiate alliances and trade agreements. In the medieval era, ambassadors were often priests or scholars who were trusted by their rulers to represent their interests and negotiate on their behalf. It was not even uncommon for people themselves to be bartered over in these agreements, as an alliance would usually be cemented by a royal marriage. During the early modern period, diplomacy became much more institutionalised, with the emergence of permanent embassies and the establishment of international law. In the past, allies usually shared a common interest: Christians uniting against Muslims or Greek culture versus Persian culture. But as the Austrian Habsburgs were looking like they were about to win the 30 Years' War and dominate the European continent, France, with the help of Cardinal Richelieu, made a decision that would bring diplomacy into the modern world. The Catholic France aligned itself against Catholic Austria in support of the Protestants, and again later aligning itself with the Muslim Ottomans to maintain a balance of power. Through this change in practice, Realpolitik, the theory of doing that which is necessary to win, no matter the moral cost, was born. The balance of power was a theory that if no state had the upper hand, then no state would logically go to war. All were balanced. The Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which ended the 30 Years' War, marked a turning point in the history of diplomacy, as it recognised the sovereignty of states and established the principle of non-interference in the affairs of other states. The old order was upset by the French Revolution. Suddenly, the people of the nation-state also had to be negotiated with. The great powers banded together to defend authoritarianism and tried to stamp out the revolutionary fire in the first two coalitionary wars. France won and was taken over by Napoleon. The gains of France upset the balance of power, and now the Europeans had to repeatedly unite again to push back France. France kept winning, France remained powerful, and so the geopolitical nature of the world is that the wars will continue endlessly until the balance is restored. Eventually, Napoleon was defeated. The Congress of Vienna in 1815, which sought to restore stability to Europe after the Napoleonic Wars, was one of the most significant diplomatic events of the 19th century, as it established a system of collective security and established the balance of power as a key principle of international relations. Britain, with their supreme naval power, emerged as the policeman of this policy. The Congress system of Metternich, the Austrian diplomat, also formed during this period, a system where geopolitical disputes would be solved through massive multinational diplomatic congresses with the intent of maintaining peace. Bismarck, the man who embodied Realpolitik, maintained the Congress system, the largest under his name being the Berlin Conference, which led to the scramble for Africa. Bismarck evolved the balance of power into an alliance system, believing this would protect the newly formed and surrounded Germany best. The theory was that with big alliances, no power in Europe will ever risk a war, because the war would be so large and so devastating that it would not prove worthwhile. After Bismarck was removed from office by the Kaiser, no more diplomatic congresses were held for quite some time, the alliances became more secretive and communications broke down, leading to the massive devastating war that it was designed to avoid, World War I. After the war, the victorious powers held the Paris Peace Conference, which would sign the Treaty of Versailles. However, there was a lack of unity with their aims. The Americans, believing too much in democracy and goodwill, thought it would be a good idea to divide Europe by nationalities. This was a complete oversight and ignored the balance of power theory altogether. It instead created a bunch of weak states, easy to gobble up, by Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, leading to an even worse balance of power upset. Neville Chamberlain's approach was one of appeasement. There is a debate about Chamberlain right now. Was he right to appease Hitler, to buy time, or wrong and cowardly? Whatever your opinion, it is often overlooked that it was not just Chamberlain who bears blame during this period. The French and Americans sat idly by, the Soviets took advantage of the weaknesses of Europe, and many other smaller states backstabbed their neighbours for their own gain. The world, however, was eventually able to come together to defeat the Nazi threat, realising action was required to restore the balance of power. The post-World War II system saw a number of significant changes in diplomacy, including the emergence of international organisations such as the United Nations, the replacement of Britain by America as the policeman of the world, and the development of nuclear weapons, which made the prospect of war between major powers more devastating than ever before. The nuclear threat became the new alliance system, way more dangerous, but should hopefully make war seem far too risky for it ever to be tested. This period also saw the introduction of the red phones, connecting both the leader of the United States with the Soviet Union, allowing for the first time real-time contact between the two powerful leaders. The Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union was characterised by intense diplomatic manoeuvring, with both sides seeking to gain the upper hand through propaganda, covert operations and arms control negotiations. Later, under Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger, the US would try and work with China to push them away from the Soviets, stabilising the balance of power. With the fall of the Soviet Union, a cautious attempt was made at friendly relations. Although they have made great progress, distrust has once again set in between the West and Russia. In recent years, diplomacy has been transformed by the rise of digital technologies, social media, and the globalisation of communication. Diplomats and statesmen are now able to communicate instantly and engage in real-time diplomacy, with social media platforms providing new opportunities for public diplomacy and outreach to global audiences. The true effect of this is yet to be foreseen. A lot was missed in this video, and the balance of power, which I have focused on throughout, is only really one interpretation. But if you enjoyed this video and want to go deeper, learning more, please subscribe to Harry's History, where hopefully I will be able to cover all of it.